There you go.
All right. Me and technology, good combination. This meeting will be conducted in compliance with Nebraska's open meeting laws, a copy of which is on the back wall. Could we please start with the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for
which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you. We have some people that are participating telephonically today, including Commissioner Kraft. Before we get started, I want to take a quick moment to wish Mark and Joni, they had their 50th wedding anniversary yesterday. And I certainly want to congratulate them on that milestone and to remind Joni once again that she could do better.
Thank you.
So with that, Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Borgeson? Here. Commissioner Boyle? Here. Commissioner Kavanaugh? Here. Commissioner Kraft?
Here.
Commissioner Morgan? Here. Commissioner Rogers? Here. Mr. Chair?
Present, thank you. Commissioner Borgeson.
I would just ask, if I not,
Commissioner Duda, we're having trouble controlling the mics over here, so you're going to have to run the show. No one can turn on there other than Patrick, I, and Glenn. The way it's set up, the chair has to let the other commissioners turn on their. You have to turn on the mics for their commissioners.
Wow, such power and ignorance. I have no idea how. Okay, Commissioner Borgeson.
I'll just try to talk really loud here. I would just ask that we take a moment this morning. This all started, I don't even know how many days ago, with Mr. George Floyd being murdered it escalated across this country, and we are affected here locally as well with the death of James Gerlach. And so everything that is happening, I'm struggling with. I'm struggling with trying to find the words, what I really feel, if I'm mad, if I'm angry, if I'm sad, if I'm frustrated, and I am frustrated. So if we could just take a moment and plead with our community to stop the violence. Your voice is being lost through the violence. We want to hear, and we have to hear. We can't just say we're listening. We have to hear what people are saying to us, and we have to act. We can't any longer just give lip service, but we have to act. But I plead with the community, I plead with all of us to please keep it peaceful, stop the violence. That is not helping anything at all. So if we could just take a moment, Claire, for that. Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Borgeson. Yes. Good message. Good reminder. Okay, we are calling to order the Board of Equalization. The first item for consideration is approval of the minutes from the May 19th meeting. Item B is to set June 9th as a date for hearing on certified assessments corrections. What is the pleasure of the board? Motion by Commissioner Boyle, second by Commissioner Morgan to approve A and B on the equalization agenda. Any questions or comments to either of these items? Then could we please vote?
I vote yes.
Motion passes 7-0, one voting virtually, all other in person.
Thank you, Mr. Esch. Citizen comments. Does anybody wish to address the Board of Equalization on any item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we move on to resolutions D through F. We have no need that I am aware of for executive session, so we could include adjournment with that motion. Is that Commissioner Rogers, the second? Okay. We have a motion to approve D, E, and F and adjourn. Any questions or comments to any of these items? If not, could we please vote?
I vote yes.
Before I announce the vote, just a reminder to everybody on the Zoom call, please mute yourself if you're not speaking. Motion passes 7-0, one voting virtually, all others in person.
Thank you. We will now call to order the Board of Commissioners meeting for today. Could we please have the roll call?
Commissioner Borgeson, Commissioner Boyle, Commissioner Kavanaugh, Commissioner Kraft,
I'm here.
Commissioner Morgan, Commissioner Rogers, Mr. Chair.
Here. Thank you. Before we get into the county board meeting, I do want to mention, and I'm not sure which, we're striking one agenda item. Okay, it must be C. Yeah. Under consent, we are not ready to move forward yet with item C, an agreement between EULA and the county. So we will not be taking any action on that item today. Okay, minutes, Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Thank you.
Correct.
So those are both
Correct. Yes, item D was pulled in time to get a line through it. Item C was just pulled like yesterday and the agenda had already gone out, so. Exactly. Yes, just not today. Okay, item minutes and claims, items 1A and B. Questions or comments? Could we please vote?
I vote
One
yes.
moment. One moment, please. Okay, thank you. Motion passes 7-0, one voting virtually, all others in person.
Thank you. This brings us next to the consent agenda. As I say, items C and D are out. So we have a motion from Commissioner Boyle to approve the remainder of the agenda. And a second. Questions or comments? I know we have Mr. Riley present. If anybody had any questions on Commissioner Kavanaugh. We're having trouble with the mics here. Sorry about that.
On C and D that we spoke about earlier, I think that we had kind of an agreement that was proposed to allow hazard pay for folks working at our Douglas County Health Center. And that's being revisited for some reason. I just wanted to make it clear that I think the idea was everybody who's on the front lines, healthcare workers, possibly others, would be eligible for this, which if I can get a view, I know we're gonna come to this later, would be COVID-19 related and possibly CARES funds related. Is that?
If I could interject, that is not accurate. The proposal to the union, and we can, get into more detail in executive session under contract negotiations. So the proposal to the Teamsters Union for the nurses was to provide hazard pay to those who actually worked on COVID positive units, not to all staff within the entire health center. The county board, that is what the county board directed, that is what we proposed. The Teamsters have rejected that because they want every nurse that works in the facility at any time to get hazard pay. That's not in line with what other facilities have done and are doing. So that was not something the county board has agreed to. So that, those negotiations presumably could continue, but for the time being, that's off the table. EULA has agreed to the county's proposal. I'm not sure what the details of why that's not on, because I haven't talked to Marcus about that, but that presumably will come back. But we can discuss that in more detail, the reasons why in executive session under collective bargaining. It's not
Right,
appropriate for open session.
I guess my point
Gentlemen,
was
if
that we're
I
talking
can
about-
interject.
We're talking about, excuse me, I have the floor.
Yes,
We're
you do,
talking
but I'm
about
trying to get
the-
people to stop talking over you, Commissioner Kavanaugh. If anybody is on the Zoom call, please mute yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. We're talking about the facility and the discussions that I was involved in, and my position on this is people in the facility are pretty much equally at risk, and certainly with the scores of cases in the facility, they ran the gamut. So, you know, having these facilities qualify, particularly with the frontline healthcare providers, is what this is about. And making this just very, very narrow is counterproductive, bad employee relations, and really not recognizing the science of the spread of COVID-19 in our Douglas County Health Center and the risk it posed to our employees. But we'll revisit this when we come back. I think what we're seeing here is pushback from the employees and their collective bargaining units saying, wait, we think everybody was at risk in these facilities, and they're right. And your ability to provide for them is part of the COVID-related CARES Act expense that we're going to receive, you know, $166+ million on, and it should be taken care of that way. That's the discussion that I hope that we will have going forward when these come back on the agenda.
Thank you. I'm not real comfortable negotiating publicly, particularly for items not on the agenda. So the motion before us is to approve the rest of the consent agenda. Questions or comments to that? Then I would call for the vote, please.
I vote yes.
Motion passes 7-0, one voting virtually, all are voting in person.
Yep, thank you, Tom. Brings us down to recognition and proclamations. We have 2 county employees that are retiring. The first is Barbara White from the Register of Deeds office after 22 years of service. The second is Kevin Conlon, retiring from the Sheriff's office after 28 years of service. Are either of these people present?
I make a motion to approve and to thank them for their service, serving the taxpayers of Douglas County and the citizens so well. I know both of them are really great people. So congratulations, and they made it.
Thank you, Mike. And I will second that motion. Questions or comments?
Just give me a moment to adjust the agenda, so I'll get it up as quick as I can.
We miss Ellen's flying fingers. You have a tough act to follow, Dan.
Okay, it was motion by Boyle, second by Duda.
Yes.
All right. You can start voting when you'd like.
I vote yes.
Motion passes 7-0, one voting virtually, all other in person.
Thank you for that. Citizen comments. Anybody wish to address this board on anything not on the agenda? This is your opportunity. Good morning, Larry.
Good morning. Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, 68132. This morning I'd like to address this board on the basis of our Constitution and some local laws. This is a facility that's shared by city and county, and city and county are both wrangling for funds from the state and from the federal government. So both boards sort of work together. There is an item on the agenda, not here, but on the city council agenda today. But since it's on there, it also applies to anybody that's a resident of Douglas County. And that is titled Hate Intimidation. Now, last week, this was the very last item on their agenda after a very long day of legislation. Very few citizens are here, probably very few listening. This was sort of snuck in because I really did not hear it read. It was supposedly first reading. Today, this afternoon, is second reading and maybe public hearing. Be the one short, quick thing for citizens to try and stop it. Well, June 5th and June 6th, a couple of hundred years ago, Patrick Henry stood up and addressed the body. And a lot of people said, oh, those guys changed the Constitution, referring to the Articles of Confederation. But they never talked about why they changed it. Because it didn't meet the exigencies of the time. And this legislation certainly does not, particularly in view of the last couple of days. Every citizen has the right of free speech. No citizen has the right to legislate against it. There is a state law, there's a federal law, there's a city law, there's a county law.
There's no county laws.
All right, but you have to go by city and state, don't you? However, this federal government supersedes everybody else. This is another piece of legislation that is not necessary because it's covered in the Constitution. But we have boards of people all around the country that want to suggest that the Constitution is larger than it is. 3,000 pages now. These people are called progressives. Now, a brief reference to what was in the cover letter for this legislation concerns me very much because it refers to all the other cities around the country are doing the same thing. Now, I'm aware that local politicians go around the country to different boards, different associations. There's a governor's association, state legislators association, the mayor's association, county officials association. Mary Ann has been to those. There aren't any citizen associations. Those people are actually working against me. I'm not a 501c3 either. I don't have the money. I don't have the bucket. And they probably suggested this legislation. That's against me as a citizen of the United States of America. And this needs to be stopped. It's a waste of the money for this facility to even debate it because it's unconstitutional in a number of ways. We won't go into that. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Is there anybody else that would like to address this board at this time? If not, we will, next on the agenda is the CARES Act update. And I will say, there aren't a whole lot to update on just yet. We are, of course, trying to get an auditor in place before we do anything as the first move. The state has retained Deloitte Touche, and we have been in contact both with the state and with Deloitte Touche. We would like to we'll be proposing that we piggyback on the state's contract so that Deloitte Touche would track separately any work they're doing for Douglas County and would bill us accordingly. So it would be using the state contract. I hope that if the county attorney is comfortable moving that quickly, I hope that we can have this on our agenda next week for the board's consideration. So you have your task cut out for you, Teresa. We continue to receive requests from a number of entities and utilities. At some point before we ever start dispersing anything, we'll make a list of all the requests that have come forward to us for everybody's and the public's consideration as well. So once we have the auditor on board, then we can begin figuring out who's the first round of funding and how we're going to move forward. But the first step has to be to get the auditor on board. Commissioner Boyle.
Okay, I don't know how this might be.
It's apparently not.
Thank you very much. The questions that I have, first of all, it should be fairly simple to do this, but if we could tell the public, who qualifies, first of all. I mean, do you have to be a 501c3? Can you be a neighborhood organization? Can you own a restaurant that's closing? Any of those things, who qualifies for these funds? Is it just governmental bodies, the city, Waterloo, whoever? Secondly, how to apply? We had a really good presentation from the young lady that came down and spoke about Together and the OTOC, really, which is really in tune with what I'm thinking, because my feeling is it should be people first. And I think we need to tell citizens how do they apply, through their neighborhood organization, through some other organization, the Salvation Army, somebody. But it's a little unclear, at least in my mind, and some of the people I've talked to, who qualifies for this money. And secondly, if you qualify, how do you apply and to whom? So that would be just some real simple things to get out there, I think, if we could.
It would, and we don't have those answers yet. And
Okay.
and in terms of who qualifies, that's a decision that this board is gonna have to make.
Okay.
If we want to get, it's been discussed, the possibility of working with the nonprofits around town to try to reimburse some of their expenses. This is eligible potentially for SBA type things for small business. It's eligible for rental assistance.
Okay.
What fields we want to go into are the decisions this board is going to have to make
Okay,
as we move forward.
When do we plan next? Are we going to meet or something? What are we
Well,
doing about that?
It will be done, I am not planning on special meetings, they'll just be
Okay.
done at our Tuesday morning meetings, but I'm not planning on anything until we
Okay.
get the auditor on board.
Okay.
And I would hope that in fairly short order after that, we will start figuring out who do we want to open this up to. But before we open up to anybody, we have to have the process in
Yeah.
place. We have to
That's what
know
I'm-
what the process is, and I'm really looking to Deloitte Touche to help guide us on all of that.
So you think that by next week or 2 weeks from now, we'll have some kind of a notice that says this is who qualifies, this is who we're trying to serve, how to apply?
Who qualifies is a decision we have to make.
I know,
That's
but
not-
we're going to make that, aren't we, fairly soon?
I would hope. Perhaps within 2 weeks we
Okay.
could. Not next week. Next week is just
Good.
the auditor, but if the board is ready to move forward within 2 weeks, fine, then we
Okay,
can do so.
okay, that's really what I'm after, is trying to find out, we can tell citizens who are interested and need services, who qualifies and how do they apply. Pretty simple things. And that's what I'd like to see us decide fairly soon, so that people can get ready. I mean, I'm getting calls particularly from people in South Omaha who want to organize, who have organized, and are trying to give out, masks, and are trying to help people, particularly at the multi-generational families where they have a person working in a packing house. It's really getting bad. It has been bad too. And the high number of COVID out there is really serious as well. And Mr. Rogers has the same problems in his district as well. So anyway, whatever we can do to help people find out who qualifies and how do they apply, that would be something I hope we get done pretty soon, if I could. Thank you very much.
Very
Mr.
good. Thank
Chairman.
you, Commissioner Boyle. Any other comments at this point? Commissioner Cavanaugh?
Is this live? Okay. The discussions on these, I'm interested in from the point of view of how we plan to spend the 166 plus million that we received directly, and then what share are we expecting from the state? I believe it's receiving over $1 billion in excess of our 166 million. I guess I'd start with the question of when are we going to discuss this Deloitte Touche question? I don't remember the board having any discussion relative to this, and I was wondering if we were going to have any discussion, or we're just going to proceed with the Deloitte Touche thing without discussion.
It will be presented at next week's meeting for the board's consideration.
Okay. I'm a little concerned because the state has an enormous amount of money, far in excess of our 166 million. And as a key component of the state of Nebraska, Douglas County is entitled to a portion of that. I don't know if the governor has indicated anything other than he's not going to give us any of that. And I was wondering what discussions have been had with the state relative to our participation, rightfully, in the $1 billion plus portion of the CARES Act that went to the state of Nebraska.
Commissioner Borgeson?
It is not us, it is not Douglas County who's getting money from the state. It's anybody who's 500,000 or less in population within your county that gets the money from the state.
I don't think you understand my question. My question is relative to the state's allocation, well in excess of $1 billion, which we, Douglas County, as part of the state, certainly are entitled to a portion of. What discussions have we had with the administration relative to that?
I don't think the state has any intention of putting any more money into Douglas County.
Then I guess I don't understand why we would secure the same auditor as the state. I'm not on the same page with that. I think that we have every right to participate in that allocation to the state of Nebraska. We represent almost 1/3 of the state's population, and we should be participating in that and not making it easy for the governor to circumvent the people of Douglas County's right to have those monies by going into, I guess it's an undiscussed arrangement with Deloitte Touche, who works for the governor. The public hearings that we should have on the 166 million, I think, are something I'm interested in. Having had a public hearing that we'll discuss in a little bit in the HHS committee last week, where we talked about using CARES funds for rent support of Douglas County residents. I was wondering what other public hearings we might be having on this before it comes to the Douglas County Board, or are we having no public hearings before it comes to the Douglas County Board? Mr. Chairman.
It is my intent that virtually every Tuesday morning for the rest of the year is going to serve as a public hearing on this.
I see. Along those lines, considering that it's been over a month now that we've had the CARES money on its way and now with us, what, if any, list of possible programs does Douglas County have, if we're going to have public discussions, that we would be considering for CARES funding? Have we been able to, in the last month, develop that information?
They're all works in progress. There's a number of working drafts around for different departments and things. We are compiling a list of the direct expenses that our departments have incurred. We're just receiving requests at this point.
Well, I've had discussions with numerous departments and elected officials, all of whom have submitted things, but none of that has come to the county board. In addition to, I was made aware of a letter from the director of the Omaha Public Power District to the chairman, you, and the commissioners on this board relative to their interest in this CARES thing. We never received that letter. I never got a copy of that letter, although it was directed to all of us. Where is that?
As I have said numerous times, we are accumulating requests right now. We aren't ready to act on any of them, and absolutely, I apologize if I didn't share something that I meant to. It is my intent to share everything that comes my way. You got it? Okay, well, you got it? Okay, good. You got it? Sounds
Well,
like.
I didn't receive that. Are only
Okay.
certain commissioners receiving
I
correspondence?
couldn't tell you why you apparently are the only commissioner that did not receive it. It did not come from me, it came from OPPD.
Yes, to you and the commission. In any event, the discussions with the governor relative to our participation with him, what are those? Apparently you're conducting those on your own, so what are those discussions that you're having with the governor?
The governor has contacted me several times to discuss how we move forward on these things and how to respond to the city of Omaha. I would remind you that I wanted to have a steering committee in place, and you told me that you would accuse me of doing everything in secret if I had such a committee, so
Well,
I'm
you are
doing.
doing everything.
The floor is mine. So
Actually, it's mine.
You asked me a question, I'm trying to give you an answer. Are you going to let me answer? the requests that we receive, we will try to formalize all of these and share those not only with the commissioners, but with the world before we ever have any decisions to make. We're not to the point of making decisions yet. So I haven't been that worried about making sure everybody had every bit of information, but I will do so.
Okay,
Commissioners, could I just clarify one thing if I may?
Please.
Under the CARES Act, the state gets an allocation and the jurisdictions with the population over 500,000 gets an allocation. The county receives its allocation from the federal government. There is no provision where we would be entitled to a share of the state's allocation. We got our allocation, the state got their allocation. The state's allocation was actually reduced by the amount that we received. So instead of getting 1.25 billion, the state got a little over $1 billion, and we received 166 million. As far as the list that's being put together, we don't want to piecemeal that out and have that out for public consumption until we have an idea of getting further guidance and working with that accounting firm to know what is eligible and what is not. So rather than piecemealing it, we want a comprehensive list that we can share, because once we share it, it's shared with the world, and we're not at that place. Plus, with guidance continually coming out, things are continually in motion. So we would like to be as comfortable as possible before that gets disseminated publicly.
I appreciate that, although that's not what I asked. And there is no prohibition from the state sharing their $1.2 billion with anybody in the state. That's at the governor's discretion, who apparently is engaged in direct but undisclosed discussions with our fellow commissioner, Mr. Duda. I understand this repeated piecemeal argument used by our administrator, but it's not piecemeal to the elected officials. You have no elected responsibility relative to these monies. We do. So the piecemeal to us is our call. I want all the information that we have as quick as we can get it. You can do with it what you want, but I was elected to oversee this by the people. You're elected by no one. So the control of these funds is not under your statutory authority. You have no statutory authority. It's under ours.
With all due respect, Commissioner, I take direction from the county board as a whole, not individual commissioners. If the county board wants to direct staff to release that information, we will do so. But I can't take direction from one commissioner in that regard, as I work for all 7.
Well, I appreciate that. Apparently, you can't even pass on correspondence to the entire county board, as we have just discussed relative to the executive director, the CEO of OPPD's letter to all of us, which I did not receive. So if you can't do that minimum level of keeping us in the loop, it does not raise confidence in your ability to put together a list of CARES projects and share them with us and the public. The public has a right to know these things. I know that you are loath to share things with the public.
Commissioner, with all due respect,
but they have a right to this, and we were elected as their representatives. You were not.
Commissioner, with all due respect,
to make sure that they are informed. That's all I'm asking for, is that information.
With all due respect, my understanding is that OPPD letter went to all 7 commissioners. It did not come to me to distribute to commissioners. I did not hide anything from the county board.
Oh, I thought.
And with all due respect, I do take offense to that, and I do take offense to the mischaracterization of my duties and my behavior.
Well,
So
there's
The floor is
statutorily clear that you have
The
no
floor
statutory
is
duty.
I have nothing more to say in that regard.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would care to speak?
Yes, I'd like to talk.
Commissioner Kraft.
Yes. I received a letter directly from OPPD.
Everybody did.
So if Commissioner Kavanaugh didn't receive one directly, perhaps he needs to address that with OPPD,
Mhm.
because it was in my inbox. I would assume it was be in all of our inboxes,
Apparently only 6 of them.
apparently. So that would be something Commissioner Kavanaugh addresses with OPPD.
I would agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else for the good of the cause under the CARES Act? More to come. Larry? You may.
Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha. I want to thank Mr. Kavanaugh. Yes, the elected officials have that responsibility. They also sort of have to answer to us one way or another. Unfortunately, it's only through the ballot box. We don't seem to have much effect here. But with everybody that's lining up for the funds, you have a fiscal and a fiduciary responsibility to not let those funds out to people that don't really need it. Maybe even return the money to the coffers back in DC, and it came out of my billfold to start with. So let's approach it very carefully. Again, I'm not a 501c3, and there's a lot of those that march down this side of the aisle here to get money from this body as well as the lower body. And they'll be coming and asking for more money. And we saw some things last week. Oh, we need another commission for this and another commission for that. More money to spend you don't have. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Anybody? Commissioner Borgeson?
I wasn't going to say anything, but I have to, because I've been here every day since this started, and our staff has been doing a stellar job. So when they're attacked publicly, I feel it's my duty to speak up. They are doing their job according to what the board told them to do, and they're doing it very well amidst all of this chaos of COVID and now all of the other stuff that's happening. So I for one, want to give kudos to everyone who, not even just here, who's working from home and haven't missed a beat. I think it's horrible that someone would attack them publicly, especially during this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Morgan, do you have a microphone?
No.
Can you take that to BJ, please? Thank you.
Well, I want to just echo what Commissioner Borgeson just said also. And I also want to say it's my understanding, and Commissioner Duda, correct me, we are going to be discussing this here. We are going to get the requests, and there will be public information, totally.
Absolutely.
And for others to make the statement that we do this, in private meetings, we're not going to have any private meetings about it. We're going to do the best job we can in listening to all, but most importantly, we're going to be following the guidelines that the government prescribed to us, and that's where the accounting firm and legal becomes involved for us to make that decision.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner
So
Morgan.
you can correct me if I stated anything incorrectly of
No.
what we're doing.
No, that was accurate. Thank you. Any other comments during this portion of the meeting? Okay. Next week, as I say, I hope we are ready to take action on retaining the accounting firm, and at that point, we can get out of the starting gates, I think. The public hearings, we have two scheduled for this morning. The first is and I will open the public hearing for Class 1B 07762 license for Midwest Golf Operations, Inc., Stone Creek Golf Course at 6220 North 160th Avenue. This is continued from last week because they had not gotten notification out quite in a timely fashion to all of the surrounding neighbors. I assume that has happened now?
Yes, it's been completed.
Very good. Is there anybody that would like to address this board during this public hearing?
Miss, would you mind restating your name for the record?
Yes, Julie Horgan, 134 and 5 Eaglehorn Drive, Omaha, Nebraska. I'm the managing partner of Midwest Golf Operations.
Thank you. Appreciate your being here this morning. If there are no questions or comments, I will close the public hearing.
Second.
And the race is on for the motion.
Thank you.
And I'll let the clerk figure out who made the motion.
This is probably closer to Commissioner Borgeson's district, so I'll give Commissioner Borgeson the
All right.
motion. And Commissioner Morgan the second.
All right.
And we are ready to begin voting when you are.
I vote yes.
Motion passes 7-0, one virtually, all others in person.
Thank you. Yeah, I wish you well. The second public hearing, item B, is a resolution to approve the reappointment of Kathleen A. Rosito of 10001 North 72nd Street as a trustee for Hospital Authority Number 1. Kathy is actually a good and longtime friend of our families, and we're lucky to have people like that that volunteer to come forward for some of these positions. This is a public hearing. Is there anybody that would like to address this group on this item during this public hearing? If not, I will close the public hearing. What is the pleasure of the board?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve Kathy Rosito. Smiling Sam Super Service. Used to be out in Florence. That was her father-in-law. That was Smiling Sam. It was great. Okay, could we go ahead and vote then?
I vote yes.
Motion passes 7-0, one voting virtually, all others in person.
Thank you. We'll come next to the committee reports. Anything under budget or finance? PJ or?
I did get some of that money from the kids, and I lost it. No, that's not.
There's a reason we don't turn your mic on sometimes, Mike.
PJ and I have been talking with Joe, and we're working on some things that I'm not really sure what.
I'm sorry, Mike, we're having difficulty with the microphones here, and we all want to be sure we're hearing what you say.
So that's what I had to say. No, I'm just PJ and I have been talking to Joe, and we're trying to, and other commissioners as well, trying to figure out exactly what we should do about the budget. One of the things is we're going to be pushing it back so that we're not approving it before we know what the receipts are, and that's a great idea from Joe. That was his suggestion, which I think is very important. And so one of the things that I'm looking at, and I've gotten a couple calls already, are some of the increases that have occurred on homes particularly. And I do know that some of the apartment complexes have been blasted pretty well. I just don't know what the answer is when we have, we're pushing for people not to be evicted, which means they don't pay their rent. And then we tell the landlords we're raising your valuation, you have to pay more for your buildings. Somewhere in between there, we need to figure out what we can do, if anything, to take the pressure off both people. And I mean, this is a terrible time to be putting people out in the street, but that's how things work sometimes. And so I think we need to look at that and explore, again, maybe with some of this federal money, what we can do to take the pressure off. Some of these agencies, I don't want to set up another agency or have us be doing things, but what I've been telling people is the best thing they can do right now is to call 211. And 211 is not a service itself. It directs people for help. So if they're getting evicted, they know who to call. If their mortgage is being foreclosed, they know who they'll give them information on calling their banker and so forth. In any event, we're struggling this year because we need to keep the budget under control as best we can. And we do not control, of course, the elected offices, so what they do. But I think it's a time for us to start looking at the services that we're offering and what we can do to better deliver our services. And by the way, I misplaced my driver's license, had to get a new one, so I drove out to I guess I'd call it France Plus. I had to go to Highway 370 and 48th Street in Sarpy County, and I asked the woman how come they didn't have any in Omaha, and she said, "This is Omaha," and I said, "No, it's not." And then I described the governor in colorful language. Anyway, so I went to Ames, 56th and Ames or so, and got but there's only two places, one in Douglas County, to get that sort of service. One's going to be built out in 170th Street, that lives right across the street from where Mary Ann lives, and so that'll be convenient for her. Anyway, that's off the subject. We're going to be looking close at the budgets to see what we can do. That's really what I wanted to say. And PJ's a wonderful partner, and we got to talk about these valuations too. What we can do to help take the pressure off of people who are out of work and their taxes are going up.
Thank you. Did you? Okay.
So there you have it.
Mr. Clerk, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just kind of piggybacking off Commissioner Boyle, just to remind everybody that the month of June is the time to submit a property valuation protest. If you went to boardofelqualization.org, we have some guides and a lot of information on how to file a protest, and of course, they can call 444-6510. Now, that number is, we can't really explain why the value went up or down. We can just try to help you figure out how you should go about submitting your protest. And again, the website's boardofelqualization.org, and the phone number is 402-444-6510. June 30th is the deadline to submit a protest.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Appreciate the reminder. Commissioner Morgan.
It's my understanding we will have those public meetings with the referees. I know Catherine Hall's been working on that. That's my understanding, that they will be meeting in person if they request that.
If they request it. First choice is by telephone. But if they request an in-person meeting.
And I have had calls from people. There's some people that have had their values on their homes, not because they just bought them or anything like that have lived in their homes for years, that had 50% increases, 30 to 50% in Omaha, which I'm not certain I understand that kind of an increase with what's taken place, but that's what Commissioner Boyle was talking about, so we'll see how things go, and that's it. And then there's other items, and I know, Commissioner Duda, that it's a value in January. However, we do see continuous changes in values as they go through March and April, so I'm not sure how that works with setting them in January.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, one thing I wanted to bring up, I want to ask legal counsel, and don't have to have an answer today, but I'm curious, what authority does the Board of Equalization have in rolling back increases across the board to 10%? Can you find out what authority we have, if we can do that, and what impact? I'll have to ask one of the money changers here what the impact would be financially to the governmental bodies if we did that, but maybe a 10% or even less. If we can roll it back to a set increase for everybody, commercial and residential as well, I think we're going to have to look at it, because I'm not even sure they can stand a 10% increase. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome to ask the question, but I think we kind of know the answer, that we.
Let's just ask.
Again. And for what it's worth, my house went up 100%. I doubled this year, so. Okay. Anything else under finance? Good enough for the moment? Any other committees? Health and Human Services, Commissioner Kavanaugh, did you wish to?
Yes, thank you. The Health and Human Services Committee held a hearing on the 28th last week regarding general assistance and the possibility of offering rent support to individuals in the community. General assistance already provides limited rent support to folks meeting their guidelines, and we discussed for the emergency making the suspension of those guidelines part of our overall suspension of public bidding and other things, and then allowing a vigorous use of the, it's up to $1 million in unexpended funds that the General Assistance Department has returned to the county each and every year, and provide those to needy renters in our community, and then apply for CARES reimbursement relative to the CARES Act discussion. So that is an ongoing discussion. There was a robust community involvement at the hearing, and they are in discussions with our General Assistance Director and their administration relative to how we can speedily allow people who might exceed our current general assistance rent support guidelines to meet this COVID-19 related crisis in rent support, which most people are due right now at the first of the month, and so it's really time sensitive, and hopefully the general assistance people will come to us soon with a recommendation of how we can do that. But clearly these are COVID-19 related expenses that our citizens are being subjected to because of the massive job loss relative to the pandemic. And we should seriously look at using some of our $166 million plus to alleviate this need as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Human Resources, anything to be sharing there? We're updating the civil service regulations, keeping them current with the latest COVID appropriate actions. Legislative issues, not yet, but soon. Okay, I am not aware of anything else in open session. We do have need for executive session. The floor is yours, Commissioner Boyle.
I wanted to add some comments to what Mary Ann said. I thought they were, first of all, they were eloquent and really hit a point. I actually got an email from someone who's listening and heard what you said. And she said that what Mary Ann said was absolutely on point and really wonderful. That's what was said. And I agree, and I think, you know, we need to think about some things, and I hope that somehow this all brings us closer, but I'm not sure. I want to repeat some things I've said before about hate and the things that occur. It's really bothersome what's happening in the city. Where I live in the Brandeis building now, and it's really been ripped apart. They haven't figured out how to get upstairs yet, so that's a good thing. But anyway, I want to say that hate begins at home, and if you think about it, if you and your wife or you and your husband use racial slurs, or if you talk about other people who are not like them, ourselves, and you talk about them in negative ways and derogatory ways, the kids hear it and they pick it up, and that's how they form their opinions. Ann and I decided that we didn't talk about it, we just did it, but we raised our children so that they were around people of other color. They had good friends. They were all welcome in our home. When nieces got married to people of other races, we always made sure that everybody was there. And I made the incredibly stupid remark to a black serviceman in the Air Force who was marrying my niece. And I said, he's just a terrific guy. And I said, it's so great to have you in the Klan. And I said, oh my God. And Ann said, what did you say? So anyway, I said, it's with a C, not a K. But anyway, the point is that we need to be sure that at home, the things that we do and what we say matters. And everywhere, wherever it's said. And so I just want to encourage people to speak nicely of others, welcome everybody. You know, when everybody knows all these things, but if you really, speech matters, what you say can form opinions. So please be careful and be supportive of all of our fellow citizens.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good words, good message. We do have need for an executive session for negotiation and legal advice.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn into, not adjourn, but to go into executive session for negotiations and legal advice. Could we please vote?
I vote yes.
And we'll try to figure out how to get you in there, Mark.
Thank you.
Might not try too hard, but.
Oh.
Motion passes 7-0, one voting virtually, all the rest in person.
Thank you. There will be no further action taken when we come out, just so the world knows. The only action we'll be taking is to adjourn.
Commission, yes. Yes, the motion was by Commissioner Boyle, second by Commissioner Borgeson to reconvene and adjourn. PJ, you're voting yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you-
Everyone
oh,
else can
I'm
vote.
Sorry, do you need me to go up and vote?
It's okay. We'll record you as a yes.
And I don't know Mark isn't here.
All right, motion passes 4-0. Commissioner Kraft, Rogers, and Kavanaugh are absent. All others are present in person and voting yes. Meeting is adjourned.